a counseling psychologist in training at Glasgow Caledonian University with extensive experiences in the field of both counseling and psychology, both academically and professionally. Mr. Fraser Smith conducts qualitative analysis in sexual health and antibiotic resistance. He is also the host of GetPsyched, a video blog on YouTube which explores numerous topics in psychology which are designed to be relevant for psychology students and graduates. And the last, Mr. Fraser Smith is the counseling representative of Psychreg, the National Organization of Psychological Postgraduates in the United Kingdom. So ladies and gentlemen, again, please welcome Mr. Fraser Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Sagan. When you said handsome, I thought you were talking about someone else. My salt must have been tomorrow. So thank you. Like I was introduced, thank you so much for that introduction. My name is Fraser, and I've got a few contact details here. I'm going to go through that a little bit. I don't have any books to plug necessarily, I just have me and some content, which hopefully you'll absorb. My email address here as well, much like other speakers, you can catch my reference lists online. I'm happy to email that to you. But today I'm going to be looking at the topic of men's mental health. And my heading is what man up really means, the issue around the mental health of men. So a little bit of background to me. I work and study at Glasgow Caledonian University in Scotland, and they'll be very happy for that shout out. I'm a tutor there, I'm a researcher, and I also study. I'm a counselling psychologist in training, a couple of years into my degree. I know there's a few therapists in here, some qualified, some still in training. I'd be really interested in chatting to any of you after this presentation. I do a number of pieces of work with different organisations, including Psychreg, the British Psychological Society, primarily the Division of Counselling and Psychology, and I do my own stuff as well, which I'll go into a little bit. You can connect with me on social media channels, and we'll go into some detail at the very, very end. My website is frasersmithcounsellingsci.com, and this was introduced. My YouTube channel is GetPsyched. You can subscribe to that and check out some of the content there. I will get into the actual content. One of the great things that Psychreg do is that they actually have a YouTube channel themselves, and it's the Mental Breakdown. And the consistency, I was chatting to Bernie Richard earlier, the consistency with which they put out content is incredible. I really recommend that everybody checks their content out. And I was very fortunate about a year ago to conduct an interview with them on men's mental health. If you search their channel and have a look at men's mental health with Fraser Smith, you will get a little bit more of a detailed outlook on men's mental health if you're interested in the topic after this presentation. So, what am I going to be looking at today? I'm going to be looking at an overview of men's mental health. I'm going to be looking at the factors in its growing development, both on a national and international scale, and I try to incorporate the Philippines into that too. I'm going to be looking at the barriers experienced for men actually accessing therapy, so not only the factors that contribute to developing mental health issues, but also the challenges around men actually seeking help for their mental health. I'm going to be looking at what some of the research says and also what is missing. My talk is a little bit different in the sense that my research is yet to be conducted. The brilliant talks that you've heard already, a lot of research has been conducted in there. And my research so far has to be done with a kind of very broad literature review around the area so far. So the issue itself, mental health is a massive global health concern. It affects millions of people across the world. And it develops a number of ways, and you may have heard this in media outlets, especially the case in the United Kingdom recently, that suicide rates and diagnosis rates are increasing at tremendous scales. However, mental health is very different for different groups, and men experience mental health issues in completely unique ways, contrary to other groups. In the United Kingdom, there's been a lot of campaigns that have incorporated understanding men's mental health a little bit better, and primarily trying to get men to open up and talk about their mental health difficulties. And this is where the real issue is actually getting men to discuss the challenges of mental health that they're experiencing. And organisations have found time and time again that the developing factors, the factors that contribute to mental health, are basically down to the fact that men struggle a great deal to say that they are struggling mentally. Well, one of the best ways that I can illustrate the men's mental health issue is via some statistics. And if we take a look at the United Kingdom, where I'm from, of all the suicides completed in 2017, 78% of them were by men. And that equates to 4 in every 5 suicides being conducted by men. The issue of mental health in the United Kingdom, at least, is so severe that the most likely cause of death of men under the age of 45 is that they'll actually take their own life. So if you're under the age of 45, like me, but the most likely cause of my death in the United Kingdom would be that I would actually eventually take my own life. That's how severe the mental health issue is amongst men in the United Kingdom. One of the most striking statistics in men's mental health in the UK was actually publicised very recently. And it was that 84 men a week take their own lives. And this was given a lot of media coverage regarding men's mental health issues. And as a result, there have been programs and processes to try and understand this a little bit better. But one of the ways that awareness was raised was via a national television channel in the UK called ITV, who ran a campaign about these 84 men a week that take their own lives. And what they did was they actually created faceless mannequins and placed them amongst the edges of their building, their headquarters based in London, I think. 84 in total, to represent 84 men that commit suicide every week. And actually this campaign got a lot of controversy. A lot of people actually stopped their cars. A lot of people were actually about to jump off the building. But it got a lot of controversy saying that it was a little bit too close to the bone. I actually think this campaign was fantastic because it got the point across. Suicide and mental health amongst men in any group is not an issue that we need to skirt past. It's an issue that we need to face on. And I thought this campaign was a really good way to demonstrate that. So we've looked at the UK, we've looked at mental health amongst men statistically in the UK, and it's extensive. But what's not extensive is therapeutic uptake. In 2017 in the UK, of all the people that actually were in therapy, of all the population, only 36% of them were made up by men. So there's huge discrepancies between mental health in men and suicide and actually men in therapy. And I notice this in my work as well. I see very few men, I see majoritively women. So we've got a number of delegates from the United States. Let's have a look at some of the statistics there. Well, every year in the USA, 6 million men are diagnosed with depression. And very similar to the United Kingdom, of all suicides conducted in the USA, 79% are conducted by men. Men are 4 times more likely to be diagnosed with a mental health disorder, and we're going to go into the stigmatization amongst those mental health disorders in a little bit, but in the States, they're 4 times more likely. And every 20 minutes in the USA, a man takes their own life. I can hear from the rumblings that this is quite shocking statistics. I know it can be a little bit difficult to digest, but I really do want to set the scene for how salient these issues are. Now, with regards to the Philippines, that come out a different colour. I know what your flag is, don't worry. The statistics amongst men's mental health in the Philippines were a little bit harder to come by. I was talking to a student earlier who was telling me a little bit about men's mental health in the Philippines, so maybe he can divulge a little bit more. But they were quite hard to come by. But I've got a few statistics. Of the reported suicides, once again, of men in Manila, there were 2,558 reported suicides in Manila last year. I suspect there's vastly more. I think I was saying Dan earlier was telling me the population of Manila is tens of millions. So I imagine that the statistics are actually much higher. But of the reported suicides, 2,009 of them were by men. And the issue is increasing year upon year. From 2016 to 2017, there was a 25% increase in mental health diagnosis amongst men. What about internationally? That was a picture of the below, if you can see. 632,000 men take their own lives every year. And there's only one country on earth where more women take their own lives than men, and that's China. So we've gone into the statistical background as to men's mental health, how severe it is, and I know some of those statistics are quite hard to absorb. They can be really shocking, and as I go through it on a daily basis, it shocks me every single day. But why is the issue so severe, both on a national and international level? Well, there are a number of different barriers. Openness actually accessing therapy is a key one. Stigmatization of both mental health disorders amongst men and actually men talking about their mental health issues and accessing therapy. The male identity and the hegemonic masculinity, and how all of these factors contribute to one another. They don't just stand alone. Each of these factors contribute to the other. And I'm going to talk into a little bit more depth about some of these. So some of the key factors I'm going to look at today is going to be primarily around stigmatization. Like I said, stigmatization of mental health disorders and therapeutic uptake. I'm going to be looking at male identity and understanding if we actually know who men are and that they're not a homogenous group. Men come in all different shapes and sizes, they come in all different kind of personalities, and we're going to go into a little bit of depth about this. I'm going to look at zero-sum gender beliefs, which is a new area of research amongst the men's mental health field. And I'll divulge a little bit more of that when I speak about it. I'm going to be looking at masculinity, primarily hegemonic masculinity. And I'm going to be looking at ineffective coping strategies or self-treatment, such as excessive alcohol consumption and drug use among men to cope with mental health difficulties. And then finally, I'm going to be looking at the use of language in men. And what I mean by that is that primarily this is to do with barriers within men's mental health. So what men like to say, what they don't like to say, and diagnostic terminology such as depression and mental health. If men like those terminologies and if they don't, and why and why not. We're going to look at that too. So the first point of call we're going to look at is masculinity. Now, masculinity in itself is actually really easy to illustrate. All you have to do is to search on Google. Now, some of the concepts that come to your mind when you think of masculinity might be things such as physical strength, it might be things such as autonomy, as independence, as not expressing weakness and not seeking help. And some of those concepts might actually be illustrated in these three images here. And you might think that I just chose these images by random, but what I actually did a couple of weeks ago was I typed masculinity into Google Images, and these were the first three images that appeared. And I thought that spoke volumes about our social construction and our social perception of who men are, both men and women, stereotypically speaking, being men to hold some of these characteristics, or at least should try and adhere to some of these characteristics. And I thought simply by typing masculinity into Google Images, we got a real sense of what society, both nationally and internationally, think about men and what they think about masculinity. So the question begs then, what exactly is masculinity? Well, primarily, a lot of research argues that it is socially constructed. Masculinity is based on our social understanding of what men are. Masculinity and a man conducts different roles. They take on the role of protector, of being successful, showing no weakness, of being physically strong. And a key one here by McKenzie in 2016 is by burying negative emotions. One of the things that I said earlier, the reference list, you can get that by emailing me. The McKenzie paper is really, really key in the mental health literature, especially recently. And some researchers actually argue that masculinity is the single biggest barrier to both developing mental health issues in men and challenges with men accessing therapy. McInnes has gone as far as saying that masculinity is a fantasy, and it helps makes order and understanding a construct that we don't fully grasp. And that there's not just simply one masculinity, but that there are multiple masculinities. This gets to the point where men are not a homogenous group. There's different kinds of men, and we need to understand that if we're going to tackle the mental health issue amongst men. So masculinity in itself, I kind of came up with these constructs on how I think masculinity develops. This is not necessarily based on any research, this is just based on my literature review and what I've read and some of the factors that I think contribute to masculinity. We talked a little bit about social constructionism, we'll talk a little bit more about that briefly. I also think there's a cultural element to this. There'll be different perceptions of masculinity in the Philippines than there is in Scotland. There's a social biological concept of masculinity, and also there's a historical concept of masculinity. So, like I said earlier, masculinity is socially constructed. Men have certain characteristics, and society demands that men should adhere to different stereotypes. Men don't cry, men don't seek help, men don't talk about mental health, are some of the social constructs that we expect of men. And we can actually see social constructionism of masculinity on social media. I'm getting Piers Morgan about the battering here, but there's a few others as well. So just basically on how we deem men. The top right one here I think says a lot by Piers Morgan. It says 34 million UK adults are mentally ill. What utter nonsense. Man up, written, and focus on those who really need help. And this concept man up is in the title of my presentation. And it drives me a little bit mental. I don't particularly like the term man up. I can imagine most of them. But I just think it has such connotations of masculinity. You know, manning up. I think Pierce has actually got another great quote here about Brad Pitt and saying that he should man up when he talks about mental health in a GQ interview. It's this concept of manning up that we need to somehow just stop talking about mental health. Pretend it's not there. Just get on with your day. Just suck it up and see. And it'll be fine. I think these tweets really do highlight some of our social understanding of what masculinity is. Masculinity also has a cultural aspect, and of course you'll be able to understand this in a Filipino context. Masculine norms are based off of the environment in which men are placed. And however, masculinity, cultural aspects of masculinity are not the full story itself, and if they were, then we would incorporate women into the sense of masculinity. Masculinity encompasses a number of different factors. And for example, there could be different cultural norms for what we expect of men. It could be masculine for one culture to play physical sport and not to dance, whereas it could be masculine for another culture to dance and not play physical sport. So masculinity is very much based off the concept, the culture in which the man is placed. The social biological factor of masculinity. There's a causal link between being a man and adopting masculine principles, and a lot of this has to do with hormones and testosterone. I'm actually going to go into a little bit of detail about this when I talk about older men and why this is debated and perhaps maybe not necessarily the case. But biological masculine characteristics do exist, things such as competitiveness, aggression, and strength. However, again, the social biological factor of masculinity in itself is not the full argument. There's also an historical component to masculinity. Masculine norms are based and passed down from father to son, and research has shown that because of this, actually makes it really hard for us to break these masculine norms, for us to gain and develop new masculinities that incorporate talking about mental health for once, which is very hard to do, largely because of this. And also historical components such as in the United Kingdom, the Industrial Revolution created bigger divisions of labour and duties when men went out to work and conducted hard physical labour jobs. Women stayed in the house and cooked and raised children and were not seen as much. I know these characteristics were there before the Industrial Revolution, but they very much came to the forefront. It's the same in the USA after the Civil War. Men were asked to, or demanded that masculine identities stay as they were. Instead of fighting one another, though, they asked or demanded that men play sports that are aggressive and competitive. American football, for example. Basically, the bottom line is our perceptions of masculinity, our perceptions of hegemonic masculinity, and the masculine principles that we demand men adhere to equal developments in their mental health. One of the concepts I want to get across is that what masculinity is the opposite of what mental health is. Masculinity demands that an individual man is strong, doesn't show any weakness, doesn't seek help, and doesn't ask for assistance, whereas mental health requires all of these things. Mental health is experiencing a weakness of some kind, if you want to label it like that. Mental health requires that an individual reach out, seeks help, asks for assistance. So the concepts of masculinity and mental health really are the kind of two opposites of a magnet in some ways, and we need to try and find a way to make these interact a little bit better. So the next concept I'm going to be looking at is male identity. And the first question I want to ask you is, who are men? And this is going to be attributed and connected a little bit to what I talked about in masculinity. There's so many different kinds of men, and with every single man comes a different appreciation of mental health. Mental health in itself is not applicable just to men as a whole group. I showed you that slide earlier on that talked about mental health being a world health crisis, and it is. But we can't just simply leave it at that. We can't just leave it as mental health and men, and that's an issue. We need to understand the difference in men. We need to understand that with every man comes different appreciations of mental health and different needs for treatment. So not only are there different kinds of men, but for every single man comes different identities during their lifetime, from birth to adolescence to employment, fatherhood, and into elderly age. And the elderly age section is an area that I'm going to focus a little bit on. My research in the coming years is actually going to be focused and attributed to older men's mental health. So male identity at birth. Well, hegemonic masculine principles are employed from birth. We say things such as big boys don't cry, or that's for girls, to differentiate what is for boys and what is for girls, and to differentiate what is masculine and what is not. And it's really easy for us to illustrate this again, based on the toys that we give young boys, based on toy guns, tanks, soldiers, even the muscular, masculine superheroes that young boys idolize. Tell them about what they should be as men. Tell them about strong, independent, autonomous, masculine figures. And I think when I used to play Spider-Man all the time when I was a kid, I can't really imagine Spider-Man opening up about mental health issues. Now that's not really something I think I'd say at an international conference, but I think it's applicable to what we're talking about. That's not the kind of thing, when I was brought up anyway, that you would expect a man to discuss. So we can see this from birth. These hegemonic masculine principles are adopted from an extremely early age. But yet, once again, from birth to adolescence, our perception of masculinity and the demands on men changes. Pascal has actually written extensively on teenage masculinity, and I suggest that you go and read on his work if you're more interested. And he says that adolescent boys police one another to maintain masculine principles. So the kind of peer pressure mentality, you'll be fully aware when you came to school, or you went to high school, or you changed schools. The sense of peer pressure becomes a very, very impactful thing, and makes you do things that you normally wouldn't do. And in men, young men, the concepts of masculinity and characteristics change from birth into things such as aggression and rebellion and disengagement. Now, I'm speaking on a very stereotypical nature, but these factors are applicable. And one thing I want to get across in adolescence, which is to do with therapeutic uptake, which I'm going to talk about later, is that only 13% of teenage boys diagnosed with depression actually seek help. So even at this extremely early age, we already start to see massive divisions in mental health rates compared to therapeutic uptake amongst men. And when you see it at such an early age, it really should be an alarm to us that more is needed done from an extremely early age. So what about employment? After adolescence, normally comes employment. I'll probably skip a few years, but Festo has written a book in 1975. It may seem a bit dated, but actually has a lot of examples and points that I think are really, really applicable. And that book is called The Male Machine. Again, I recommend that you have a look at that if you can. And he argues that employment incorporates masculine principles such as overcoming of obstacles, attacking problems, seizing the offensive, being successful, being competitive, and being ruthless. And these concepts are applicable largely to men in that workforce, and it actually distinguishes men between women in some cases. That's at least what Festo argues. And so we can start to see again the lineage of masculinity amongst men's lifespan and how that changes. As we go into fatherhood, male identity in fatherhood is constantly changing. It was extremely different 50 years ago from what it is today. I just think today it's a little bit more complex. We still demand that men are this authority figure, and we demand that they are, a bread seeker to an extent. We hear terms more often such as stay-at-home dads, which is great. but the masculine principles still apply. Yet today we expect men to be more caring as well, to be more nurturing, and to be much more of a face-hunting parent role, if you will. So I think these three images actually illustrate what we expect of fathers today. Again, working, being affectionate, being the disciplinary figure, has a lot to do with what we expect of men in fatherhood today. And the point I'm trying to get with fatherhood and with the lineage of men is that the constant change in identity, the constant change in masculinity, makes it very difficult for men to understand who they are, and in turn makes it very difficult for them to understand their mental health issues. Now, if we go into old age, this is, like I said earlier, this is the primary focus of my research, and will be for the next couple of years. And before I started, it's been hugely under-researched. And it's actually been argued that older men are the single most at-risk demographic of suicide amongst any age or gender. It's older men. When I say older, I mean 60 plus. I know we talked a lot about older men in different age ranges, but I'm going with 60. Some people might thank me for that. So, older men, the most at risk of suicide. There's new challenges in men as they grow old. And I think some of this is going to be quite applicable to what Tina was saying earlier. Primarily, that change is to do with a loss of identity. Men no longer are identified as men when they grow old. They're identified as old. And so, Gleaves has argued that there's a degendered identity amongst older men. What he means by this is that, as, like I said, men and women grow old, they are within the elderly category. It's no longer older men or older women or men or women. They're now in that group of older people. So they lose this sense of identity. There's a loss of masculine norms. Things such as being physically strong, even being aggressive and competitive to an extent, is no longer an option due to the inevitable process of aging. There's a feminization of older men. And this is some research, again, has to do with the fact that as men who traditionally were the breadwinners, went out and worked, and now are retired, spend a lot more time at home with their wives and partners, it takes on a much more feminized identity. And again, we're talking stereotypically. There's a loss of personal mastery. Now what I mean by this, or what the research means by this rather, is that there's a loss of an ability to actually autonomously take tasks up and effectively execute on them. Men are no longer able to undertake tasks as they used to. And as a result, the same research by Angela in 2016, which is another great study, said that excessive social support actually contributes to this loss of personal mastery, meaning that as people try and help older men more and more, the sense of mastery or personal mastery reduces as, again, there's a loss of identity here. And kind of what I've gone into already, physical and economic limitations impact identity. Men are no longer able to work necessarily, they're retired, or they're just physically unable to work. And so as a result, they struggle with understanding that sense of identity. When my grandfather was in his 60s, and in fact I think maybe in his 70s, and he was a bricklayer. And he'd been a bricklayer since he was late teens, I think. And he fell off a 22-foot building when he was in his 70s and completely shattered his arm and many other bones. He was lucky to live. But as soon as he fell, he got up and wanted to go back to work immediately there on the site. And his identity a lot was attributed to his job. And I can imagine for him, it's not necessarily something I've talked to him about, maybe I should. I can imagine for him that loss of identity as a worker was extremely difficult to accept. There's a biological factor to the old age and masculinity. Like I said earlier, this is something that's under a lot of debate, but some research argues that a reduction in testosterone due to the inevitable process of aging equals an increase in depressive symptoms and tendencies. And this is due to this testosterone reduction. However, there's a lot of gap in the literature, and some argue if that testosterone reduction actually does attribute to depression, or if it's actually just a process of inevitable aging. Other studies have found no correlation, for example. So the biological factor is still under a lot of debate. There are physical limitations, kind of things I've already gone into to an extent. Again, this is an inevitable, that's a really hard word to say, inevitable part of aging. And again, it's correlated to masculine principles, this ability to to undertake physical tasks. And physical limitations equal the increase in depression, and research has shown this time and time again. That same research actually states that older men, if they partake in physical activity, no matter how meaningless it might seem or how minimal, they actually experience increases in reductions in their depression. And that should come as no surprise. But this again comes with its own issues, because a lot of times these studies show that when men are older and they have to conduct minimal tasks, it actually highlights them how incapable they are, and as a result can have contrary results. So there's a lot of contemplative work that needs to be done regarding actually executing on men's mental health. So there's the changes that men experience as they age are huge when it regards to mental health. Men who are younger experience stigmatization, that's the older men, but in different degrees. Younger men experience impacts of masculine principles and masculine norms. They experience the externalization of mental health disorders. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about what I mean about that in a minute. Whereas elderly men experience physical limitations. They experience not only a loss of identity, but nothing to replace it. The only thing that really does replace it is this new elderly identity. They're no longer men, they're old people. Testosterone reduction to an extent might play a role. And elderly men, actually something I've not gone into, but elderly men are a minority in society. They're a minority in society, and they're also a minority in nursing homes and care homes. I don't know if that's the case in the Philippines, but it is in the UK. And this research has found that this isolation is excessive because workers in care homes are predominantly women as well. So not only in these, let me say that, nursing home, but not only people in a nursing home, but also the staff primarily are made up of women. So men start to feel ostracized even more, and this contributes to loss of identity. Now stigma, that has a figure of Superman there, doesn't it? That comes there, I don't know what that's about, but I suppose stigma to an extent is applicable for Superman. You can just go to the S instead. So stigma has an impact on men's mental health too. Now, I said earlier that some research argues that masculinity is the biggest cause of developments in mental health and therapeutic barriers, therapeutic uptake. But other research actually says that stigmatization is the biggest barrier. And that same research states that the developments that we experience in men's mental health and challenges with therapy consists of 59% of those challenges are made up by stigmatization. So why is there such stigma? Well, the stigmatization, again, Superman has been replaced, has to do with this masculine principle or these masculine norms, as well as our lack of understanding of who men are and the male identity. This equals stigmatization. I want to go back to this concept that mental health does not correlate with who we think men should be. Mental health has to do with seeking help and asking them for assistance and experiencing some real challenges, not the kind of things that we demand of men. Again, this concept of man up, or this term man up, that perhaps we could change what it actually means to an extent. Maybe it could be that we're experiencing man up as somebody who has the courage to come forward and talk about their mental health. We often see a lot of celebrities, especially in the United Kingdom, men who are praised for coming forward and talking about mental health during the World Cup. There weren't any Scotland players involved in that, but there were English players. And they talked about their mental health challenges. And they were praised throughout the media, and rightly so, because of how difficult it is to come forward and talk about these mental health issues for men. Sorry, I think there's a sliding thing there. There's a few things replaced for some reason. Anyway, yeah, there we go. So, Boyson in 2017 says that the stigmatization amongst men is actually so complex, it comes in 3 different layers. First of all, men experience stigmatization due to the fact that mental health and therapy in itself is pretty stigmatized. They also experience stigmatization based on the fact that they are men accessing therapy or experiencing mental health. And on the third layer is that men typically, stereotypically, experience what's known as externalized mental health issues. So they often, violent and aggressive behaviour is often attributed more towards men in mental health. And also things such as schizophrenia are attributed more to mental health, where these mental health disorders are more stigmatized. So the stigmatization amongst men is massive. Coping strategies, again, the English here has changed, I'm not really sure what that is, but ineffective coping strategies are an important thing to be looking at when we're looking at mental health. Men are more likely to consume alcohol, and they're more likely to use drugs, and they're more likely to use that as self-treatment rather than going and seeking help. Men conduct huge amounts of ineffective self-treatment, and Goff actually says that men are much less likely to seek help than, much less likely to seek help than women, but they're also much more likely to take treatment into their own hands than seek professional help, such as alcohol consumption, for example. But there are also other forms of ineffective strategies or ineffective coping strategies amongst mental health men. The term workaholic is one that you might be familiar with, but research argues that this term, or the concept of being a workaholic, is a form of an ineffective coping strategy amongst men. And it's in line with masculine norms. So the fact that a man will go out and work really hard and work excessively and work himself to death sometimes is a masculine thing to do. So it's easy to stay within those masculine norms. Also, I want to argue to you, if actually suicide is a coping strategy, like I said earlier on, we saw some really striking statistics regarding suicide rates amongst men internationally. And I'm kind of begging the question to you, is suicide in line more with masculine norms than going and seeking help? Suicide is almost the ultimate form of taking control and actually taking immediate action to a problem or an issue. It's autonomous, it's individual, it doesn't require expression of weakness. And so again, I think we come back to this concept of masculinity, who men are, and I think that's what really has to change if we're going to see developments or improvements rather. Again, the image has changed. We've got to on that. Okay. So zero-sum gender beliefs is something I'm going to talk about just now, very tentatively. And the question you're probably asking is what exactly zero-sum gender beliefs are. Now, we spoke a little bit earlier about marginalised groups, and I want to say first of all that I'm under no illusion that as a white middle-class male, I'm the least marginalised group on earth. But I still feel that zero-sum gender beliefs have a role. And more research recently is showing that it has an impact to play. But again, what is zero-sum gender beliefs? Well, basically, when the increase of equality, an increase of rights, an increase in attention, primarily in media, of an out-group can actually negatively impact the in-group. And when I say out-group here, I mean women, and when I say the in-group, I mean men. And Wong in 2017 has argued this and said that he argues that there's a limited pool of opportunity, and that when one group wins, the other group loses. And basically what he's saying is that with increases in attention, rightly so, for equality for women, men as a result lose out. I debate this a little. And actually one of the things he does say, however, is that because of the attention of lack of equality for women, such as equal pay, men, as a result, sometimes think that they don't have a right to come forward for therapy. And you can understand where this comes from. Like I said, I'm a white middle-class male and the least marginalised on earth. Do I really have the right to come forward to a therapist and say, listen, I'm really struggling with mental health? Does that feel right when I hear about out-groups and other minorities and other groups that have a harder time of it than I do? And I think that's something that we need to consider when we're getting men to come forward for therapy. The use of language is the next thing that I'm going to be looking at. That's some literature. There's varying perceptions regarding language and use of language in therapy and diagnosis in men. And Williamson actually conducted a really good study. Again, this is a great study if you want to have a look at. You can get the results from it. There is contrary evidence to what kind of language men preferred and what they didn't like. Some men avoided the diagnostic language, such as you are depressed or you have a mental health disorder, because they thought it was unfamiliar and they felt out of control with what it really meant. It was also contrary against their masculine identity. The depression diagnosis or the mental health diagnosis really didn't correlate with what they viewed themselves as. However, some men actually preferred it. Some men saw it as an opportunity to solve a problem. and a condition that illustrated that there wasn't necessarily something wrong with the man, but that they had contracted something, like they had contracted a disease that they had cured. And that, as a result, brought in more connotations of what is masculinely appropriate. And other studies have found very similar results. So we come to this idea, is depression okay to use as a term amongst men, or is it not? Well, like any good psychologist, the answer isn't black and white. The answer can be shades of grey. And some men do prefer the term depression, some men don't. That goes for mental health as well. So what are the actual options for men? Some of the things that come to your mind will be therapy. As I said, I'm a counselling psychologist training, and I'll always back the benefits of face-to-face therapy. Many of you are counsellors as well, and I know you'll do the same. Sorry, I can go back to that slide. Maybe call that. This was an image that I had on a poster in a conference a number of months ago, and it kind of illustrates that these factors we talked about, the ineffective coping strategies, the masculinity, the stigmatization, even zero sum gender beliefs, have an impact in men accessing therapy. Not only in the development of their mental health, but also in them actually feeling okay to go and see a therapist. So the health-seeking behaviours of men, like I said, and as we already know, fewer men come forward than women to seek therapy. And current therapeutic interventions may not actually be all that appropriate for men. And what I mean by that is this face-to-face or group-based therapeutic intervention that might actually not be best suited for men. We're going to go into a lot of detail about this in a second. And one of the studies that I think is really, really telling about men and accessing therapy is by Mahek in 2006, who looked at the preferences, the therapeutic preferences of men who suffered from mental health. They looked at a number, it was a qualitative study that looked at a number of different preferred coping strategies. The first one that they evaluated in men was that they would go and seek help from maybe a family member, which seems quite positive. But what the second most popular preference was that men would wait and see if it goes away. This is depression or mental health that we're talking about. We've already seen the huge statistics among suicide. To wait and see if their depression would eventually just go away, like it would, you would expect a common cold to eventually just go away. Whenever I get a cold, I don't often take anything, something that just goes away. Men are treating their depression and their mental health like common cold. So why are there barriers in the first place? Well, a lot of this has to do with how men illustrate and understand emotions. Men are not as good as women as understanding emotions generally. And men can't name emotions as well as women. There's been a number of studies that have been conducted that have gone into actually understanding the different facial expressions, what they mean, and how men aren't as good at that as women. A number of those studies are down there below. I also think the media has a role to play with this and how we perceive masculinity in the news and in media, and also in movies and television shows as well. So like I said, I think primarily masculinity, male identity, and stigmatization contribute to each other, and they equal massive barriers to experiencing issues with actually accessing therapy. I don't know what that's doing. So I want to ask the question, is therapy actually for men? Okay, some of these slides are all over the place. Some of these images these are completely different from what I had, but that's okay, we can do it. So some interventions include non-face-to-face therapeutic interventions. Skype-based therapy sessions are becoming more and more common, and actually have seen increases in men uptaking therapy based on online. Also, online chat rooms have experienced increases in men coming forward, and telephone services amongst therapy services are really, really impactful for men's mental health. I worked at a number of different telephone counselling organisations and answered phones as a volunteer therapist, and I would say that about 70% of the calls I experienced were from men, and that is completely contrary to what we see in face-to-face therapeutic uptake. Now, as much as these can be really good introductory therapeutic interventions, I think we still need to get to the very basis of why we don't see men in face-to-face therapy. I think, as a counselling psychologist in training, the development of the therapeutic relationship to me is what is primary in experiencing improvements in mental health, and it's really hard to do that when we have just Skype-based or just telephone-based or just online chat room-based therapy services. We need to use those to then encourage men, perhaps, to come to face-to-face therapy. Now, some of the interventions in the UK anyway have had some really positive effects. I thought this one was primarily pretty good. This was beer mats that were distributed to some pubs in the south of England. And it said, is there a mate around this table missing? Is there a mate missing around this table? Reach out to them. And it encourages men just to kind of talk to each other about mental health difficulties. And it's in an environment where men go and seek self-treatment or go and congregate with one another in bars and pubs where they go to drink. So I think what we need to do is to meet men where they are, rather than for us to demand immediately that they come to therapy right away. Although I do agree that that's the most appropriate form of treatment, we need to meet men where they are, and I think this is a really good example of that. So, kind of summing up to an extent, what is missing in the research? Well, historically, men's mental health has been lacking, although recently that has increased. The majority, however, of the research is quantitative based, and that is valuable. It has a great amount of value. It tells us a lot about the differences between men and women, and yet there's a qualitative understanding that's lacking, much like some other research we've heard about. We lack an understanding of what men themselves actually think of mental health and what they think about their identity and masculinity. So what's missing practically? Well, I think there's more campaigns that are needed. There's more awareness and outreach that's needed, and interventions that cater to men but direct them to face-to-face therapy are salient. So what's next? Well, what's next for me anyway is my future research is going to be focused on older men. That's going to be based on a qualitative research campaign, and it's going to look at issues that are contributing to mental health development, to improve therapeutic access, and to understand what works and why in older men primarily. You can follow me on all these social media channels, on my Facebook page, on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, website, and YouTube. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for such an insightful discourse this afternoon on Manila.
So this morning we were talking about women empowerment. Now we're talking about